Welcome back everyone. In this lecture, we are going to be discussing about map, filter, and lambda expressions in Python. Lambda expressions are a way to quickly create what is known as anonymous functions, where you just use them once in the code and never reference them again. To understand why this is useful and in what context you will be using them, you will first need to talk about map and filter functions, which are present in Python. Let's get started, and first thing we'll check out the map function. So when we type map in Jupyter Notebook, we see it is going green, so it is basically telling us this is syntax highlighting, and that tells us that it is a built-in function in Python. So let's try to do something like shift tab, and we see that the syntax is map, and it takes two arguments, which is function name and then the iterables. So as we know that it takes function as an argument, so let's try to define a function called square, and it takes an argument as num and returns the square of those numbers. So this is how we define the square function, and let's try to execute this using the map function. But before this, we'll try to define my nums, which is a list of numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5. And I want to apply this square function to every number in the list of my nums. So what I could do is basically use a for loop in a code and define a function and then iterate using that. But using the map function, what we can do is like this: for item in map, function name which is square out here, and my nums which are the iterables, and let's print item. It returns the square of all the numbers present in my nums. So this is how you use the map function. A better way for the same would be using list. So basically passing it through a list. So it goes something like this: list map, the same square and my nums. And let's try to execute this. It returns the square of all the numbers present under my nums. So we saw that we use the simple square function. We can use a lot more complex functions as well using map. So let's try to define another function called splicer. So splicer does take an argument, my string, and it checks the length of the string. If it is even, it returns even. My string mod 2 equals 0, and else clause would say it returns the first character. So let's try to execute this, but before this we need to define the list of the names. Name list, the three arguments could be Rahul, Govind, and let's say Salman. So this is the iterable out here, and now to execute this using list, passing it through a list, map, function name, splicer, and then names list. So using splicer now instead of square, we execute this and we get the answer as even for both Govind and Salman, and returns the first character for Rahul because it has odd number of letters. So this is how you can use the map function. Now note that while calling these functions called splicer and square, I'm not using the open and close parenthesis because we are just passing this through a map function, and the map function will later on basically call those functions. So let's now jump to the filter function, and the filter function in Python takes in a function and a list of arguments, and this offers an elegant way to filter out all the elements of the sequence for which the function returns true, and hit a small program for this. So let's create a function which returns true and false. So we can try to define one function called check even, and it definitely takes one number as an argument, and it returns true when it is divisible by 2, so it returns true here. Now the iterables could be my nums equals 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now using the filter function, we'll pass it through a list, filter, two arguments again, check even, the function name, the iterable as my nums. Executing this, we get the two numbers in the list who are even, 2 and 4, rest all are odd. Now this is how the filter function would work. It takes two arguments, one is the function name and the other one is iterable, similar to map function. So now that you have learned about the map and filter function, now let's jump into lambda expressions and see what in context, why they are very useful. So what we are going to do is show you my favorite way of explaining the lambda expressions, and that's by converting a function step by step into lambda expressions. And then we'll actually explain or formally explain what a lambda expression is. So let's try to define a square function. Def square takes an argument num, let's say result equals the square. So this is the nascent way to define a function and return your result. So this is the definition for the function square. Now let's try to step by step convert this. So firstly execute this and let's try to do square of 3 returns 9. So now to convert step by step into lambda expression, I can do something like omit this and use return directly. This will also work. Execute this. Let's try to do a square of 2. It works. Now simplify further. We can put it in a single line. So we're almost there to define a lambda expression, and lambda expressions are basically called and also known as the anonymous functions because it's the functionality you intend to use only one time. Because of that, actually we do not give it any name, nor we do use them again and again in our code. So to simplify further, we can basically omit this as well, the def keyword, and then the name of the function. So we're not defining the function, we're just using the lambda expressions. So lambda num, and let's omit the return as well. So this is something, so this is what the lambda expression would look like. And then we now need to use something like square equals lambda num colon num square 2. And now let's try to execute this and square of, let's say 5. So it returns 25. So now this is how a lambda expression works, and usually you won't be using lambda and assigning it to a square function or something like this. Instead you will be using map and filter function in conjunction with this. So let's try to use map now in conjunction with lambda. We had something like list map square and the iterables mynums. So instead of defining square, I can use something like list map square mynums. This is how we defined. So it returned the square of all the numbers in mynums, and this is where the lambda expression really begins to shine, and this is why you use them. Now converting this, we can say like instead of square we would like to use the lambda expression. So list map, the lambda expression would look like this: lambda num, it takes number as argument, and the expression would be square, and the iterables could be mynums present in our code above. So let's check the parenthesis and try to execute this, and returns the same output of all these numbers squared. So this is how the lambda expression works in conjunction with map. So now let's see filter with lambda. So in filter we use something like check even. So let's try to use this again. So converting this could be, so we'll change this check even and pass the same mynums iterable, and let's try to use filter with conjunction with lambda. So it could look something like this: list filter, then the lambda expression instead of the function name, lambda num equals checking the even num mod 2 colon num mod 2, the expression would be equals to 0, and the iterables could be mynums again. So let's try to execute this, and returns the two even elements, which is 2 and 4. So lambda expression can be used for a variety of things. When you wanted to grab the list of characters of that string or the first character of the string. So let's try to create a list called names list, or we can use the names list above. So the names list would be Rahul, Govind and Salman. Let's try to print there names list. It prints out Rahul, Govind and Salman. So we are trying to grab the first character of the string, and the list expression, so the expression would look like list map, the lambda expression would look like x, returning the first element, the return would be x0, and the iterables are names list. Executing this, we get the first character of every element in the names list, which is R, G, and S. To extend this, we can try to reverse the letters out here. So we change this to something like this, and we can execute this to reverse the letters, and it becomes like this. Rahul becomes this, Govind this, and Salman something like this. All the functions won't be easily converted to lambda expressions. You might want to use them like a normal function itself, and you will be getting more and more experience with Python, so you will be quickly realizing that what's the usage of lambda and what lambda expression is actually doing. Alright, this is the basics of map, filter, and lambda expressions. We'll see you at the next lecture.